moving on to part number 2 of the question and answer session, and we just gonna jump right into the questions after telling YouTube to go fuck himself. So kicking off this session is Ash Ed. I don't know. You guys can look how he wrote his fucking name, so I guess he'll tell me in the comment section how he says that. But anyways, he says he lives in Los Angeles and he wants to know on the thoughts of the Chargers moving to LA. Do you think it's a bad idea, or do you think it's actually a good idea and they'll do really well in Los Angeles? I'll tell you right the fuck now, it is quite possibly the worst idea they could have done, along with the Rams as well. The main issue is that LA has some of the worst fair weather fans on the planet. They honestly don't give a flying fuck about their teams until their teams are winning. Nobody ever showed up to the Los Angeles Kings games until they made it to the actual Stanley Cup. Dodger Stadium is practically empty aside from the days Clayton Kershaw is pitching. The Lakers, of course, they draw their fans because of the celebrity factor and all that other stuff. But the Clippers still struggled to sell out games. Even when they were contending with Chris Paul and Paul Clifford in their prime, they were struggling like a motherfucker to sell out the LA arena. The two NFL teams that left 20 years ago, the Rams and the Raiders, went because their fans essentially sucked. Combine that with the fact that LA and San Diego are not too far apart, LA fans still have a weird affection for the Raiders. You know, you're going to have these two shitty teams in Los Angeles with absolutely no fan support until they win a division or something, until they're competing for the Super Bowl. So you're going to put these shitty ass fans into a stadium, you know, they have to build a stadium as well, for a couple years until they can compete? Come on, man. On top of that, the Chargers decided they were going to go work out of a soccer stadium, if I'm not mistaken. You know, most NFL stadiums are 60, 70, 80,000 fans and shit like that. They're going to put their temporary stadium right now in a 40,000 seat stadium? Come on, motherfucker. You know, even teams that are terrible in the NFL, except for maybe like Jacksonville, you know, they have fans that show up in droves to support the team. Cleveland fans still show up. Bills fans still show up in the freezing fucking cold weather each year. Jet fans show up, and their teams always suck. I mean, you have other teams that have like a down year, like the Packers, the Cowboys, Steelers, Giants, every now and then the Bears, and their fans still go to the games and support their teams even when their teams are playing like shit. But LA fans are fucking garbage, and the Chargers basically put themselves in the shittiest situation possible because they just wanted to get out of San Diego. Next question from El Poncho 751. If you could change 3 things that are wrong with the world so that it could be a better place, what 3 things would you change or fix? Have you guys ever noticed? It's pretty funny when I tell people y'all can only ask one question, then they always ask me to like name your 3 favorite, name your 5 least favorite, name your top 10 songs of all time. That way they can get multiple answers to this motherfucker. But if I had to pick 3 things, I feel like these are things that I've already mentioned in a good portion of some of my other question and answer sessions. So none of these things are going to be any surprise for anyone who's followed my channel for a while. But number 1, overpopulation of the world. You know, there's just not enough resources to sustain human growth population. That goes back to a prior question. Number 2, also a prior question, religion, or at least resolving the issue of whether there's a God or not, since the majority of wars that the world have seen all stem from religion. And the final thing that I would fix would be the stock market. Now the reality of the stock market is that major economies have used stocks and financials to maintain wealth gaps between people in their countries, gaps between the countries themselves. There is no question society is always going to have wealthy and poor. There is no doubt about that. That is not going to change. We would still have people who create businesses, who make profits, and the lazy fucks in this world who do absolutely nothing, that expect handouts and everyone else to take care of these fucking scumbags. But the stock market isn't something that works for people in the middle class. It's a tool for the wealthy to stay wealthy, to increase their wealth without actually working towards their wealth anymore. It's never been a tool for the common people. It's merely a device to obtain more money off the backs of the middle class. Removing that barrier won't just overnight make everybody have the same amount of money. That's not quite going to happen. Even matter of fact, quite contrary, it's going to make it even worse. But there will still remain rich and powerful people. It's just that they won't have a device to remain rich and powerful by screwing over the people whose backs they stepped on to get to that point. I'm not saying to get rid of the stock market. I'm saying that it needs a major overhaul to make sure the rich and powerful don't continue to stay rich and powerful just because they use the stock market. Next question from Armor Master 2. Look at this motherfucker. I tell people one question, he doesn't fucking listen to that shit. So I'm going to do these real quick, obviously, because these are actually short answers, not going to take me very long. Which celebrity would you torture? Any Kardashian, doesn't matter which one. What is your favorite music? 90s hip-hop before music came in and fucked that shit up and turned it into a conglomerate. Would you buy a properly debugged and fixed but remastered Modern Warfare 2? Possibly, it depends on the price, and it also depends on what will be out at that time. And number 4, tits or ass, it's got to be both. It has to be proportional. You can't have big one without the other. You can't have small one and then a big, no, it's got to be proportional. You got to have both. Next up, the MadPacX. In your opinion, have any of the following PlayStation 3 issues forced gamers to become more reluctant when it comes to buying PlayStation 4 games? Glitchy ports, remakes, rehashes, overhyped, underwhelming titles, dislocked content, incomplete games. You know, I think the problems that PlayStation 3 had are a bit irrelevant at this point when it comes to PlayStation 4. And plus, some of the items that you're referencing are more related to the studios than the actual consoles. You know, PlayStation's issue was that Sony got arrogant with PlayStation 3, and they figured out that studios would bend to their whims on programming because PlayStation 2 was the best-selling console. Instead, studios went with what was easier, and that was Xbox. Glitchy ports are certainly a part of that because it's easier to program for Xbox 360 than it was for PlayStation 3. However, that's no longer the case. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Xbox Uno One X, X1 X, fucking stupid ass name. You know, they're pretty much identical when it comes to programming these days. So the porting issue really is a moot point at this point between the two. Remakes, incomplete games, locked DLC, those are all issues with the studios, not so much the consoles. You know, Activision and EA are the ones leading in those practices, and players are rightfully concerned when stupid shit like that is done. But that's not the console's fault for doing that. That's not Sony's fault. That's not PlayStation 4. Studios make their decisions on what games to release and what content to release for those games. They just happen to say, I want to put it on this console or that console. So in regards to your list is more related to games, but the issues that PlayStation 3 had are pretty much gone when you look at the landscape of PlayStation 4 versus Xbox. Next question from Maco Boy. If you had to live in any country in the world besides the United States or Canada, where would you live? Honestly, I didn't even want to live outside of New York City, let alone another country. And the only reason I had to leave New York City was because the house I wanted and the property I wanted isn't possible within the limits of the city, for my budget at least. I mean, if I had $10 million, sure, but I don't have that kind of money. So getting me out of New York City alone was a monumental task. So asking me which country I would want to live in is damn near impossible. You know, there are plenty of places I would love to visit, but there isn't another country that I would actually want to live in. You know, the Caribbean is gorgeous, but I would never want to live there. Italy has the food, the skiing, and the city life that I enjoy, but it's also run like a shithole of a country with political corruption. England is fucking gloomy, and not for nothing, but their obsession with football would drive me up a fucking wall. South America and Africa are just too dangerous. Australia has too many fucking animals that could kill me. I would end up being 2 feet taller than everyone in fucking China and live in a goddamn permanent place of air pollution and shit like that. Japan is home to 90% of the world's weirdest shit. Canada's fucking cold in the wintertime, eh? Mexico is basically a drug cartel kingdom. Russia's a death sentence waiting to happen. Scandinavian countries, some of the highest qualities of life. Oh my god, they're fucking freezing. All that goddamn IKEA furniture would drive me up a wall, man. Switzerland would be nice, but it's a landlocked country and has too many disadvantages. Germany seems to have their financial shit together under Angela Merkel, but motherfucker, outside of sausages, German food is horrible. So at this point, Antarctica is like my last resort and I can hang out with fucking penguins. Next question from AceofSpades. Given the state of the NBA in terms of teams, how overpowered are the Golden State Warriors right now? You know what's funny? I remember as a kid, kept thinking, why wouldn't all the top players in a sport want to play for the same team? Because essentially, what would stop them? And then eventually, as I got older, I started learning about the salary cap and how they don't want to have to take a pay cut to do that shit. And still, I'm like, you're a fucking millionaire. You could just take a small pay cut and still win all these fucking championships. Does it matter when you're winning everything? So honestly, with their starting 5 alone, never mind the bench, just their starting 5, I can't see too many teams beating them 4 out of 7 games. You know, sure, they'll lose their games here and there. They'll drop regular season games, but having to beat them 4 out of 7 games in the playoffs? It's not happening. Not with Durant, not with Curry, not with Thompson, not with the bullshit defensive rules in the NBA today that prevent people from actually playing defense. Until these guys break up or are past their primes, the odds are they're going to be the favorites to win the championship title every single year. Next question from Reanimate. What is your stance on net neutrality? Now, I'm sure this will come as no surprise to anyone, but I tend to fall in the middle on a lot of issues because net neutrality is going to be a long legal war until the courts finally catch up to technology. However, the principle is that anyone with internet access should have the ability to obtain information that they want from any site that they want without restrictions from carriers. In some cases, carriers would prevent users from using certain sites, accessing certain sites, slow down the internet for using certain places, and you can see that becomes a slippery slope of how to police the internet. For starters, carriers should not be restricting internet. The issue of people having to choose carriers is also a point of contention, but the fact that carriers would restrict certain sites or slow down certain sites, not for any legal reasons, not because these are terrorist sites, but mainly because they're part of an opponent's project or they're part of something that they think might lead to hacking or something like that, such as the case a few years ago with Comcast restricting their users accessing BitTorrent. It creates a precedent where the carriers determine what they want their users to view. I do not agree with that at all, because if they can determine what site a user can view, imagine the boundaries a carrier could push if they only wanted users to visit certain sites while ignoring others. Imagine Time Warner Cable, or what is now Spectrum, pushing only Time Warner channels or Time Warner products. Or imagine Comcast pushing only Comcast products. You could see this is not a good idea. This is a very slippery slope of when it comes to policing your internet content. On the flip side though, as someone who pays for high-speed service like I do, someone that has a pretty damn good connection like I have, I also think the idea that people who opt for a slower speed than me should not complain when the sites they try to access require higher speeds. They don't work as well. Oh, this doesn't work. I have buffering. This is slowed down. Well, yeah, because I have a better speed than you, motherfucker. If I'm paying for a better service, I have no issue with someone having the same access to the sites that I do, but my internet should not be affected by someone who doesn't pay for the highest level. My speeds should not be slowed down because Joe fucking Schmo Schmuck who lives next to me didn't opt for the higher package. I don't want that. I don't want to be slowed down because other people can't catch up to my speed because other people aren't paying for the additional service that I have. So when it comes to that portion of net neutrality, no, I agree with the carriers on that point. If I'm paying for a better service, I expect a better service, but that service, those sites, those websites that people are trying to access with the slower speeds should not be restricted in any way, shape, or form. Next question from MI2 Lethal. Who do you think will win the Mayweather versus McGregor fight? I mean, this is not even a fucking question. Mayweather is going to wipe the ring with him, and not in a boxing match, not actually hurting him, but the fact that he knows how to outpoint people. That's it. Mayweather doesn't fucking box. He doesn't knock people out. He runs around the ring, he ties them up anytime he's gonna get in trouble, he throws a couple jabs, he runs away from damage, and at the end of the day, he wins 12-round fights because he knows how to outpoint someone. There is no way McGregor's gonna be able to compete with that. Essentially, when you're in a boxing ring, he can't kick him, he can't elbow him, he can't choke the shit out of this motherfucker. So essentially, you're playing by Mayweather's rules, and Mayweather's one of the best at all times at being a bitch at boxing. There is no chance in hell McGregor has of beating him. Unless he lands the luckiest punch in history and knocks him out, Mayweather's just going to do what he does in every single fight. Run, hold, outpoint a motherfucker. Alright, that's going to do it for video number 2. The next one will be the third and final video. Usually you guys have seen me do like 5 videos in the question and answer session, but like I said, I didn't get as many questions this time around, so obviously it didn't have as many videos. So you want to stay tuned for those answers. As always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in the next video.